And I give the floor to the Honourable Attorney-General to speak in reply. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I note that all the members that have spoken, none of them have actually objected to the actual ratification of the treaty. However, they have, of course, made a number of comments. Mr. Speaker, sir, in respect to that, and a lot of that has in fact been covered very adequately by the Honourable Prime Minister and Honourable Seriratu. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'd just like to, if I could please seek indulgence, because a lot of the members of the other side did raise a number of issues that weren't particularly relevant to the treaty, the ratification of the treaty itself. One of them was made by Honourable Tikondu Ondua about asking for the resignation of the supervisor of elections because of the High Court, the Court of Disputed Returns decision yesterday. Mr. Speaker, sir, he would know as a former permanent secretary and someone who's worked as a civil servant that a number of times there are challenges to administrative decisions, and all the rulings don't necessarily go in the favor of the administrator that's made the decision. It does not therefore mean that that person actually has to resign. It's a very cheap shot, Mr. Speaker, sir. What, Mr. Speaker, sir, they should be saying is that obviously the courts are independent, which they have claimed other times it is not. What they should be saying, as Honourable Nawaikula will tell you, we welcome him back. Mr. Speaker, sir, I may not necessarily agree with all the rationale, the ratio in the decision itself, but that's the court's ruling. And the court, in fact,
point
Mr.
of order,
Speaker,
Honourable Speaker.
And the court also, Mr. Speaker, has said...
Point of order.
It's Honourable Tikundu Ndua.
Point of order. Who's
Point of order, Honourable Speaker.
You have the floor.
Honourable Speaker. Yeah, thank you. The Honourable Attorney General is misleading the House. I have never said anything of what he's just said in the last 3 minutes. That never came out of my intervention. I can give you the script. So there's nothing about the supervisor of elections after all. I don't know where that came from. It's misleading the House, and I would like the Attorney General to withdraw it because it's not in my name. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, sir, what we should be saying is that, as any good lawyer would tell us, that this is the what we call development of jurisprudence. Laws are made, then courts actually interpret the laws where the law may not be, where the law is open to interpretation. That's what we should be looking at, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, the other point that I also wanted to make is that Honourable Ngavoka spoke about earlier on about, that we should get the entire population vaccinated. At the moment, we are vaccinating people over the age of 18. It has been scientifically proven that the vaccine that's currently available is appropriate for those above the age of 18. I certainly don't want my 4-year-old daughter to be vaccinated at the moment because the science does not tell us that it can be done. At the moment, some countries are trying out those over the age of 12. So I think it is really quite obtuse to suggest that we should vaccinate everybody without any science backing to it. The reality of the matter is Honourable Gavoka, as leader, needs to sort out Honourable Bulanauda, who says we should not get vaccinated at all, and that there's a chip in place. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, again, the science needs to be built up. Some countries are actually now saying they'll vaccinate using Pfizer in some countries over the age of 12. Some countries now looking at Moderna. But certainly it has not come out, in wholesale that all these people below the age of 18 actually can vaccinate. So we'll wait until then. Mr. Speaker, sir, in respect of the actual treaty itself, all the opposition members spoke about Ratu Kamese Semara and his contribution to the creation, or his hand in the creation of the PIFs, or the lead up to PIFs. Nobody's ever questioned that. That's not the issue. We all acknowledge that. We all know that he was one of the leading statesmen in the Pacific, in particular from the newly independent states. And in fact, when Fiji became independent, Samoa was in the first colonized countries that became independent, followed by Fiji and then Papua New Guinea subsequently, that they were the people who actually did this regional collaboration. We're not questioning that. Of course, however, we have to acknowledge the fact that times since 1970s have changed significantly. We all know that. Mr. Speaker, sir, we have a much higher level of literacy. We have a population demographic that's skewed towards people below the age of 40, or in some cases below the age of 18. We have more citizens in schools, in universities. The proportion of females in universities and high schools is much higher than what it was in 1970, 75, or even 80 or 90. Mr. Speaker, sir, we have mobile phones, we have people access to social media, we have more transnational crime in the Pacific, transporting of people, drugs, etc. We have, Mr. Speaker, sir, large movements of people, Tongans, Samoans, Fijians living in Australia, New Zealand, west coast of North America. Higher frequency levels of climatic events. We have had over 13 events since 2016. The largest storm in the Southern Pacific in 2016 wiped off 1/3 of the value of our GDP in 36 hours. Mr. Speaker, sir, climate change is an existential threat. Tuvalu and Kiribati can go underwater very soon with the current level of sea rises. The global temperature is rising 1.2 degrees now, Mr. Speaker, sir, pre-industrial level. Mr. Speaker, sir, we have, of course, climate refugees now, across borders, within borders. We've moved 6 villages to higher ground internally. There's another 40 that's been marked. None of what I've just said now were features back in 1970. Things have changed, the way we interact. We have a forum leaders meeting through a digital meeting. None of that was possible back in the 1970s. We have to deal with these matters differently. These are new challenges. We have a pandemic in place. All of this has changed in 1970. It does not in any way mean that those people who form PIFs or the lead up to PIFs in any way is being questioned. Mr. Speaker, sir, the honourable members, I think it was Honourable Naikula and some of the others talked about, the Pacific Way, the Vuvale, etc. I mean, these are simply should not be words. They need to be practiced. Where was the Vuvale spirit, Honourable Naikula, in 1987 and 2000, when people were being booted out? Where was that kind of family, communal relationship with people? Where is the Vuvale spirit when our opposition members always are obsessed with ethnicity, rather than viewing every citizen of Fiji as one? Mr. Speaker, sir, the reality of the matter is that the Talanoa spirit has been internationalized by our Prime Minister through the UNFCCC process, through our hosting of COP, of the presidency. Don't say, oh, it is actually a fact. It is a reality. And you want to actually ignore that. This is the problem, you see. You are empty drums making a lot of noise. You are obscure. You obfuscate issues. You are obscurantists. That's what you are, Mr. Speaker, sir. The reality of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, sir, that Fiji is a leader in climate change. The Honourable Prime Minister is actually seen as a leader, and indeed many people claim to be the father of the small island developing states, not just in the Pacific, but in the Caribbean, in the Indian Ocean. It is because of his leadership, it is because of the leadership of Fiji, you have Antonio Guterres over here. All of you lining up to shake his hand. That's why he came to Fiji. Because of that leadership, Mr. Speaker, sir, we had Biden attending the meeting, forum leader meeting. Digitally or non-digitally, no president of USA has ever attended the forum leaders meeting. And that's a fact. Now, if, as they claim, we had no credibility, there's no nous about it, no leadership roles, Mr. Speaker, sir, they would not have attended. Antonio Guterres would not have been here, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, the reality of the matter is that the credentials of Fiji is now so highly regarded. We have, the Prime Minister just addressed a leaders meeting that is being hosted by UK. UK is now going to host the next COP, COP26 in Glasgow. Fiji is asked to contribute at various leadership in the forum meetings and also internationally regarding finance and climate change, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, Honourable Lalam Balavu had asked, what's the practical implication of not ratifying this? Well, in practice, it has made no impact. In practice, there has been no repercussions. Notwithstanding the fact that we have not ratified, Fiji has been chosen to be the chair. So in practical sense, there is no repercussions for Fiji. Of course, we'll be carrying out this administrative matter, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, they have also said that we have not followed the Pacific way of consensus, Mr. Speaker, sir, and they've used the USP as an example. Mr. Speaker, sir, we have attended some of these meetings, and I can tell you, apart from the decisions that have not been adhering to basic laid out processes in the relevant charter of USP, the statute, the standard operating procedures, the council members at the behest of PAL have berated the Pro-Chancellor, Fijian Pro-Chancellor, selected by Fiji, his second term, no complaints about him, a former ambassador of Fiji to Washington, no problems with him. The moment this ruckus starts by PAL and his crew, motley crew I call them, then suddenly even the opposition is now berating a former ambassador of Fiji who has performed so immaculately in his role as a Pro-Chancellor. Mr. Speaker, sir, the reports he gave have been debunked. They have undermined him significantly, both from this House and outside the House. Honorable Prasad, a former member of USP, who's got specific interest in USP, they have not said a single shred of, or made a single statement in respect of ensuring, at the very least, the reputation of Winston Thompson is protected. But for political reasons, they have slandered him, they have defamed him, they've also done that to the chair of the Audit Risk Committee. Mr. Speaker, sir, the reality of the matter is that the Council, they talk about consensus the Pacific way, the Council members have basically bulldozed their way by having sheer numbers, by voting. There's nothing consensual about that. And we ourselves had said, let's have a consensual agreement, but they bulldozed their way through that. They don't come and mention this in Parliament. Not at all, Mr. Speaker, sir. No vuvale. No accountability, as the Honourable Prime Minister said. No governance structures, Mr. Speaker, sir. And yet, ironically, we are being accused of that. That's the irony in all of this. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Honourable, I think the Leader of Opposition had asked about, Fiji's contribution, etc. Mr. Speaker, sir, we are the largest member country, largest grant member country. Put into perspective, Nauru's contribution to USP is 127,000. The President of Nauru, who led this charge for a few months, they contribute 127,000, 0.003%. We contribute 80%. Now that's just the member grants. Since 2014, Mr. Speaker, sir, Fiji has contributed about $140 million to USP by way of TELS fees and toppers fees. And I'm not even taking into account those students who have gone in privately. Until today, as we speak, Fijian students attending USP who are on TELS or toppers, we are still paying their fees. We have the largest number of students at the Lodala Bay campus. So we are still contributing, Mr. Speaker, sir. And Honourable Niko Nawaikula, sort of, in his zeal to protect USP at all costs, in fact debunked the idea of Fiji having another university. He forgot that FNU is actually a consolidation of various other institutions that existed prior to FNU. FNU is made up of what? The Fiji School of Medicine, the Agricultural School, the Maritime School. Now, isn't it better, the FNTC, isn't it better to bring it under one roof, reduce your administrative costs, reduce your operational costs, and have one university? And of course, that university, Mr. Speaker, sir, also offers courses to Fijians that USP does not offer. A number of courses offered at FNU is not offered at USP. Mr. Speaker, sir. So you see, this is the kind of, pedestrian type of contributions we are getting. I mean, Honorable Seruratu said Samoa has one state, oh, so what, that's different. Are? What are we talking about? Mr. Speaker, sir, the fact of the matter is that I think the Honorable Nawai also missed the point, and just to reiterate what Honorable Seruratu highlighted, he said, oh, why were we suspended post 5 December 2006? But what we are trying to demonstrate, what Honorable Seruratu is trying to demonstrate, in 1987 when Rambuka carried out 2 coups in Fiji, shot a bullet over here in this chamber, 2 coups, we had 5 years of decree-led governance. Despite that, and despite the lot of atrocities that took place, Mr. Speaker, so I know most of you supported 87 coup, I know most of you supported 2000, let's call it a spade, that's fine, that's why you don't want to talk about it. That's a fact, right? I mean, let's agree on that. So, the fact of the matter is that despite the 2 coups, despite 5 years of decree-led governance, Fiji was not suspended from the forum. Despite the Prime Minister of Fiji at that point in time in 2000 being held captive for 56 days with his members of his cabinet, riots in Suva, despite that, and then another government being appointed without elections, Fiji still was not suspended for the forum. But 5 December 2006, post that, it gets suspended. What it demonstrates, Mr. Speaker, sir, is the machinations of the forum. That's what Honorable Seruratu was saying. What it demonstrates, and what it goes to show what the Honorable Prime Minister is saying, is the architecture of the forum. What it demonstrates is that geopolitical influences had an influence on the decisions made by the forum. A lot of people don't realize in 87 we still had the Soviet Union. A lot of people don't realize that all these things actually had a decision on geopolitical considerations. So that's Honorable Nico Nowaikula, what we're trying to demonstrate to you. I know there's a kind of amnesia regarding pre-5 December 2006, but if you want to contribute, you need to be able to talk about these matters openly in a transparent manner. Mr. Speaker, sir, we talk about standards and adherence to international standards. Mr. Speaker, sir, just very briefly, it is this government that has ensured the ratification of the 9 core international conventions. ISPRA, ICCPR, Convention on Disabled Persons, Convention Against Torture. All of these conventions have been ratified by this government. The removal of the proviso to, I think it's Article 12 on CERD, all of that was done by this government, Bainimarama government and the Fiji First government. We need to be able to acknowledge that. Just because when I sometimes listen to what the honourable members talk about and the way they talk, Epili Haofa, who was an academic, those of you who do follow the academia, and Honourable Prasad should know this, he was based at USP. In one of his readings, he was a sociologist too, if you read what he says that under his observation or through his observation, he said that in the Pacific, at times, it is the elite who decide what is culture, and it is the commoners or the poor people who are supposed to live that culture. And I think that is completely demonstrative of the Sodalpa philosophy that we are seeing today. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, sir, I recommend that we support this motion. Thank you, sir.